I'm Nicole Matthews, corporate America dropout turned entrepreneur and owner of the Henley Company, an event, travel, and lifestyle management firm. It wasn't that long ago that I was dreading my drive to my fancy corporate job each day or felt disenfranchised with the work I was doing. In 2007, I jumped off the corporate escalator and directly into the elevator of opportunity. Today, I'm an author, speaker, educator, and serial asker. I wholeheartedly believe that your life changes when you start creating your own opportunities and making big asks. Hands down, the business and life I have today is 100% the product of giving myself permission to design the life I want to live. It was always my dream to work at the Olympics, and by making a big ask, that dream became a reality. I now have multiple Olympic projects to add to my life resume. I created the Big Ask podcast to share these best practices with you. Whether you're an entrepreneur hungry for revenue-generating tips or an individual restless to make a significant change, the life you want to live could be just one big ask away. Get ready to be entertained by real-life stories, no-filter conversations, and inspired by the daily hustle. So let's get started. This is the Big Ask Podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Big Ask Podcast. I'm Nicole Matthews, and I'm delighted you're joining me today. I look forward to a great conversation with my friend Katy Temple of Katy Temple Media Coaching. We are two entrepreneurial girls who are going to spend some time here talking with each other and getting to know each other even better. So thanks, Katy, for saying welcome, or saying thank you. Let's start again. Thank you for saying yes to my ask for the podcast. We'll edit that part out. So
my pleasure. I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. So you and I have gotten to know each other in the last couple of years through our involvement with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We both proudly hold the title of Woman of the Year, myself for 2017 and you for 2019. And so I want to definitely spend some time talking about that as we move through the conversation. But for those who don't know your background, let's just start there. Give us a little bit of the quick and dirty on Katy Temple.
Okay, quick and dirty. I'll talk since we're entrepreneurs, I'll kind of stay in that realm, but I've had my own business, Katy Temple Media Coaching, Think Temple, for about 3.5 years. And I work with executives who want to be great on camera. And the reason that I do that is because for 20 plus years, I was a sportscaster, locally, nationally, regionally, and internationally. And you and I talked about how we both worked at Olympics, and I had a lovely career. I loved every minute of it, made a ton of sacrifices, had a ton of fun, worked really hard. But there was a lot of pain. There's a lot of challenges. And I always wanted, when I got out, I thought I want to help people, just fast track them through that pain. And so that's what I'm doing. Exactly. I'm working with anybody, wherever there's a camera around, whether it's talking to the media or creating videos or speaking on Zoom or getting for a job or presenting. I'm fast tracking them to be the best version of themselves. So that's what I've been up to lately, the last 3.5 years.
Good. That's great. It's so important, the first time anybody ever goes on camera, it can be a little daunting. And then especially if they're doing something live when they can't, hit, cut, edit, all those things. And so I remember the very first time I've ever had to do live television, and it is a little bit daunting, to say the least. So having somebody like you who coaches people into putting their best foot forward is incredibly valuable. But you started as a sportscaster. So how first did you get into that industry? And secondly, a woman being a sportscaster is a little bit of a unicorn. At least it has been. It is a little more prevalent now. So what was that journey like as kind of one of the first to be doing sports as a woman?
Well, I was always a tomboy, and I always played sports. My mom jokes that she tried to give me a doll when I was a little girl and I threw it over the fence. So that was that. I mean, I was just a tomboy. I grew up in a big Irish Catholic family with brothers and a bunch of cousins, and in a cul-de-sac in Merced, California, and I loved every minute of it. So we were out playing all the time, and big football games, basketball, whatever it was. I just wanted to play sports, and then I played them competitively as well. So that was a passion from go, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
You and I had talked about how we both had passions for being around the Olympics. And when I was a little girl, I wanted to be an Olympic athlete. But when I was younger, we didn't have, that was really all I could see that a woman could become sports wise. And so then I thought, well, maybe I'll just talk about them for a living. And I kind of fumbled through it. In other words, I didn't have any strict guidance or thoughts about it. I got lucky in high school where they did a local TV program and I got to cover sports. And that was that. I thought, well, this is it. If I'm going to do this. And so I kind of just found my way that way. I didn't know how to do it. They tell you to go to a small market, make your mistakes and kind of bit by bit. But I got denied by a lot of small markets. And so I did some behind the scenes work in Atlanta and got a reel together, a resume reel. And the first place that said yes, I moved out to Fresno, California and got my career going. So it took me a while. My first on-air job was when I was 26 years old, but great experience because it was Fresno State Sports and Jerry Tarkanian was a basketball coach and Jim Sweeney and Pat Hill were the football coaches, and the women's sports were at a very high level. And so it was a great place to start.
Yeah, that is. And I sports, I think, is an interesting thing. It's sort of like weather, where you really do need to know what you're talking about. It's not just about reading, the teleprompter as it's coming in front of you. My assumption would be, right. And so how, being a sports reporter, just the research you have to do all the time as well, right? Really keeping current on what's happening in the sports world.
Right. And that's true. I mean, a lot of people kind of thought that I had this glamorous life where people did my makeup all the time and everyone wrote my stuff, and neither was true. So, I wrote everything, especially as I got older. But it's a passion, so it's not work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I know you know that as an entrepreneur and what you do. So there's not, the struggle is real because it's a lot of hours and it's hyper competitive. But it's a passion. And when you're focused and passionate, it's just, okay, what do I have to do? How do I get better? How do I get better? How do I get better? And it's not a lot of work. But what you do find, and I don't know that this is a female thing as much as it is a human thing, is that there are certain sports or certain things about sports that you don't know as well as others. For example, I never played in the NFL. The only football knowledge I had was being a Raiders fan as a kid and playing in the street. Right. But I played softball in college. I played basketball. I played soccer. I never played hockey. So there's different kind of things where you know a little more internally and intimately than others. And you just accelerate to your point, your research and your homework to the point where you get to that level.
Right. And then how about working in a town like San Diego, where our professional sports market is sort of dwindling? So what is it like to work, when you lose your NFL franchise here in San Diego, the Padres aren't necessarily our most winning team. So, where are you finding stories all the time to talk about in a city like San Diego?
Yeah, I don't have to do that as much right now, which is nice in that I fill in at Channel 8. I pinch hit when they need me. When I was on the air full time here, though, we did have the Chargers 99 to 05. I was on the air at Fox 6. And so I'm good and lucky because it was a good time. I mean, that's when you were diving into the Chargers and then you dive into the Padres and then San Diego State and USD and Point Loma and all the high school stuff in between. But now I don't envy the sports reporters, really. I mean, especially now they're really struggling to find things. But when I go in and fill in at CBS, it's a lot of golf, right? And it's a lot of other maybe local angles that we didn't do before because a lot of it was by the Chargers.
Yeah, definitely. It has been really interesting to watch the media adapt to COVID and seeing reporters now reporting from home and that sort of thing. And it sort of speaks to, is that the direction that the media is headed, where these big broadcast studios might not necessarily be as necessary? I don't know, layperson asking that question, when you can be easily, you just sitting on your couch now could be giving the sports report. So where do you see sort of the media headed and broadcasting headed given COVID?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag because it's a preference, right? What a lot of people don't know is when they're watching the local news and some people are at home and some people are in the studio, that's a choice that the anchors and the reporters made. And they have that right because when the pandemic hit, nobody knew what was going on. And so the choice is, are you going to go home or stay in the studio? But we need to find that balance.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. I know some people prefer working at home and some people are chomping at the bit to get back in the studio. It kind of
Yeah.
depends on safety first. And so
Hmm.
once the vaccine comes, fingers crossed,
Yes.
then it'll,
Right.
but I think the bigger challenge is there's definitely challenges for working from home, but especially for sports right now is the content.
Yeah.
We're making some headway now, but it's the content that was kind of tough.
Right. I mean, you even just read yeah, I mean, I try to read the newspaper every day, and just even the sports section of the newspaper. I don't normally read the newspaper, the sports, but now it's just one page on the back of the local section instead of its own entire section. So yeah, it's kind of like, what are we, what stories are out there to talk about?
Right. And a lot of it out of the gate was today in history, for example, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, and it also presented an opportunity, I think, for athletes who understood the media or perhaps understood their own brand to put stories forward, because reporters were so hungry for stories at a time that you'd almost want to encourage athletes or teams to come up with their own stories to then pitch to the reporters. It probably would be a really good time to find your way into a story or on the news, because they are so hungry for content right now.
Absolutely. And when I was doing sports full time, as an aside, we didn't have really a big social media presence. Just
Hmm.
so athletes weren't creating content, and
Hmm.
it's at your fingertips right now.
Yeah, yeah. What advice would you give an athlete or a team, perhaps, that is looking to find its way and tell their story? Is there any advice you can give, kind of in the current environment?
I think, well, it's such a good question because there's so much noise, but you really want to appeal to your specific audience. So the idea is, all right, who's my audience and what do they care about and why, and what kind of connection do I want to make them and
Hmm.
with them, and just to remind, this isn't just for athletes, but it's for anybody, that the brain remembers information 30-40% more when it's told through story, and so everybody's going to be touched by a story.
Hmm.
Maybe the advice would be organizing it. Maybe people are nervous. A lot of people don't think they have a story when
Yeah.
everybody has a story. So maybe the advice is kind of brainstorming with somebody or a professional about, okay, what really matters here and what's just kind of a nice to have, because sometimes people don't see themselves like we see them, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's probably a really good place to start.
Yeah, that's all great. What has being in front of the camera for so long taught you about business?
Good question. Confidence, presence, eye contact, and present. So
Hmm.
your presence and be present. And I think that especially, so when you're in TV and on camera, and I know a lot of people understand this, but there's a lot of humility that you need. I mean, you take a beating a lot of the time, and especially at the beginning of your career, just like everybody else. I think the
Hmm.
difference is that you're taking a beating and making mistakes where other people can see you, versus
Hmm.
making a mistake doing something else where you're the only one that knows. And
Right.
so I think that that's what it teaches me about business, is that the skills that people learn from TV, confidence, writing, presence, communication skills, asking
Hmm.
a lot of questions, listening, it's it helps in business. People want you to
Yeah.
be present, they want to be heard, they want to know that you know what you're talking about, and they want to talk about themselves, which is why asking questions is so valuable. And listening, again, our most important communication skills. So I would say that it's funny because I worked in technology as an account manager, project manager after TV, and Qualcomm was my customer, so it was like night and day. But those skills were all transferable, especially
Yeah.
when I didn't really know what I was doing as much as I did in TV. But if you ask a lot of questions and you work hard, you'll get there.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. The asking of questions, so often people are hesitant. They think it's a sign of weakness. If I'm asking clarifying questions or I'm asking, directional questions, and in reality, it's a weakness not to be asking the questions.
Right. It's a weakness to
Yeah.
asking the questions.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's funny that you say that you take a beating in TV. I just actually today on Twitter saw somebody was tweeting to Savannah Guthrie that her hair was out of place, or they were disappointed in how she looked the other day. And she's been reporting from home for for, weeks now. And I think her response was great. She's like, we're all having to do our own hair and makeup, and we're just doing the best we can. And kind of my job is to report the news. And I just thought, my goodness, I mean, here's a woman who's so wildly talented and is such an important, face, of America, right? We all tune into our morning program to kind of get that news. And, yet somebody is decided because, she had a hair out of place, that was worth tweeting about. And I just thought, God, aren't we past that yet? Like, why are we making such a big deal? But it just speaks to, again, just how you show up in the world. People are going to always, often judge, and that confidence is a skill you have to develop.
Yes. And I think, and I saw her fill in the other night, and I think she wore the same top that morning. So then my thought is she's just working her tail off, obviously.
Yeah.
And that morning shift for anybody listening is very tough. It's very, very tough. And I think her comments are just epitomize how crazy things are and how out of control things are, because when you're doing network news, you've got a lot of people making sure that this looks good and clean and fresh. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the benefits of doing network news. But that's a sign that is just trying to get it right, because things are maddening right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I think I was just more disheartened that somebody, and it actually was another woman, which I thought was, interesting too, who made the comment, like, of all the things going on in the world right now, you felt inclined to stop what you were doing and tweet to her about, her hair being out of place. And I just thought, it's one of those moments again where, women helping women, the sisterhood still, we haven't completely closed the circle yet. Like, there's still it's like a colander. Like, we let some people in, but some people, there's still flooding that happens. And when are we going to get past that, where that's not the first thing? She's not acknowledging her talent. She wasn't acknowledging her contribution to women in television. She was still stuck on hair. And I thought, it was kind of frustrating to me on many levels. And I'm sure, as a beautiful woman working in television, you've faced, perhaps faced that in the past as well, that nobody cared what the story was. It was the outfit that you were wearing, and how insignificant, that is in the big picture.
Right. And when I was starting out, and most of my career, there weren't a lot of women in it. And so, at a time where you were desperate for that kind of friendship, because so much other stuff was going on that no one could see because there was no social media, that's where you really could use that female bonding. And I was lucky where I did find a handful of women in sports that were even competitors of mine that saw through that. But it was also clear when I would travel around nationally, when I was covering the Braves, where there would be visiting reporters, and you're not getting that vibe. And so you just do your best, because I think at that time there's less positions open. So it's people want to keep their piece of the pie, right? Because there's a pie. But maybe as progress happens and things start opening up, and we see a lot of women at high levels, then maybe internally women are less worried about losing their gig, because we're all trying to rise together. But I do think part of that is finding the right crew, but also sometimes it's just progress.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So when you started your business for doing media coaching, what was your vision for that? And the second part of that question is what learning opportunity do your clients have that that they're seeking to come work for you? So what's their challenge, perhaps, that they're seeking you to out as an expert in?
That's a good question. My vision was that I wanted to, if I was going to work hard, I wanted to make my own money. And I also originally was going to coach athletes and professional teams, because that's what I knew and that was my comfort level. And then I kind of just started networking and asking a ton of questions, and found that I really love working with executives. I still have athletes who are clients, but I love executives because they want to be great. That's what I love. And so the pain points that I'm finding are some psychological, as you can imagine, and some are technical. Some of them are, I want to create a marketing campaign and create videos. I don't know where to start. And so I work with them, and I can act as a production company where we dive into messaging and then their delivery. That's one. Others are people that need to talk to the media. They're thought leaders. And so I can work with them on either touch-ups or diving in and honing in on their messaging and practicing in live studios. A lot of it's role playing to get them ready for the media. Some people are getting ready to interview for a job, so I work with them that way. Other people are looking to, again, the thought leader thing is big. How do I get my message out in an organized and concise way? So the pain points can be technical, where I'm a great speaker and I have a lot of confidence, but this camera's making me crazy. And some of it is that the camera just changes people, and it's not bad or good. It's just the fact that you need to change it so I can work on the technical part. And then a lot of people just, they want to go in a corner and suck their thumb when they see themselves on camera or hear themselves. And I get it, because I've been there. And so that's the kind of the psychological part that I'm talking about. And so I like to with them on getting out of their own way.
Right. No, I think that's so true. It is amazing. Even something as simple as a microphone. I mean, you've probably seen this, when you're in a group of people, perhaps a workshop or something, and, they have a runner in the audience who hands a microphone because you have a question. And inevitably, and this drives me insane, is when somebody says, "Oh, I hate speaking in a microphone," before they get started, or, "Oh, I'm so nervous with a microphone." Like, they have to preface that they're nervous before they actually start saying something. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves. It's just like, I wouldn't know you were nervous unless you just told me that you were nervous. So don't tell me that you're nervous, right? So it is funny how people get very uncomfortable with a microphone. It's fascinating to me. I guess my gift of gab, I've never had that. So
that is a gift, which is great.
Yeah.
Why you're doing this, which is why you're successful, which is why you've made a success out of this pandemic with your business in a really tough time. And I think that, but it does make sense, and it's common, because there's the physicality of having somebody put something in their face. There's that physical part, there's the feedback and the noise that doesn't make sense. And so there's, again, part of it's psychological and part of it's technical. So we kind of work with whatever you need.
Yeah. So are you working in conjunction with PR firms, or where is sort of your clientele coming to you from?
Most of my clients are coming from referrals. I have partnerships, PR. I can do a little PR because I know how to write a press release, and I know what the good story is and that kind of stuff. So I do some of that. If it's too much for me, because I want to focus on other things, I've got a partner that I work with PR. Same with marketing. That's kind of how I'm doing it. So I'm getting referrals, and then if it's not a good fit, then I can refer or work in conjunction, right? I mean, I'm not going to shoot some videos and edit videos for you. I know you can do that. But so I hire my videographer who I trust. I have a couple teammates that I worked in news with, and I ride or die. I trust them. It's ride or die.
Yeah.
I know they can turn stuff around. They're smart. They know how to tell good stories. And so that would be someone that comes and does that work for the team.
Yeah. And how has the whole virtual world changed your business?
I noticed that one of my big clients out of the gate, who I was going to shoot videos for, high-end videos for, had to go virtual, and they wanted to create some show. And smart, confident, successful people. Okay. And I say that because this has happened to all of us. And I looked at their first Zoom thing, and it was really kind of a mess. And I don't mean that critically. I mean that I looked at it, and you've got people going like this, and they're sitting like this. And then one of them had like this headshot so that all you could see was all this. And then the founder couldn't stop talking. In other words, he didn't know where to start and stop and transition. And I looked at this and I thought, okay, this makes perfect sense. And this was in March. Early March. I thought, you know what? We've got a pandemic. Nobody knows what the heck that means. Everyone's scared they're going to die, or their parents are going to die. Now they're having to work from home. They've got kids. They've got to work. They don't know if they're going to get their stimulus check. Anxiety, fear. And oh, by the way, now they've got to come across strong on camera when they've never had to do that. And they're wondering if their dog or their kid's going to bolster into the door.
Yeah.
And do they have enough food, or do they have enough toilet paper, or do they have enough wipes, right? For the pandemic. So I thought, not cool, not fair that everyone has to worry about that thing. Yeah. And so what I've been doing is I'm still doing my regular buckets of fundamentals, messaging, and delivery. but I'm also tweaking it for clients that need help bolstering their virtual presence. How does your studio look? What is the back? How do we work on your background? What kind of shot is it going to be? How can you prepare
Mm-hmm.
your messaging? How do you come across as confident and authentic when you're not in person? So I have made that shift for people that are lucky enough to still have work during this time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so important. And I've been talking to a lot of people through the podcast in the last, several weeks, and asking the same question on, saying that virtual is not the Band-Aid for life pre-COVID, post-COVID, right? This is not the Band-Aid. This is now put a stake in the ground. The world is virtual. So even if tomorrow the gates open and we're all allowed to go back to normal life, whatever normal life, is that we're going back to, we still need to be taking what we're learning in virtual, all these best practices of virtual, and continue to apply them as we go forward. And they're going to become even more important as they come, as we're moving forward. So it's great to hear that you're providing that service and helping people to, even something as small as Zoom, perhaps, there still needs to be some coaching that takes place with that too, so that you put your best foot forward.
And again, it's a skill set. All of a sudden, everyone's being thrown into this position. How are they going to know if they don't know, or they have time to kind of find their way because they're busy with other things? So
yeah,
I just like to give, I just remind my clients, I did a session today, just give yourself a little grace. We'll get you there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is kind of the nice thing that people, I think, through this is hopefully we are giving each other a little grace. If the dog comes in or if the child comes in, perhaps not in, a keynote that I'm giving, but, in a normal conversation or something, that has been nice that people just are sort of forgiving of that in this chapter right now, where people are kind of like, yep, I get it. The phone will ring or the dog will bark, that kind of thing. So that has been lovely to see that there has been a little bit of grace that we've given each other too.
Humanity.
Yeah. Yes, humanity, right? My goodness. So let's talk a little bit about mentorship. Have you had some mentors in your life? And I imagine you are mentoring, younger professionals or people in transition yourself. But what's that journey been like for you in your career?
That's a great question. And I will say that Patrick Henry, who's a colleague and a friend of mine, who is he's a CEO of Grow Guru and has, built businesses and sold them and has had a lot of success. And he said, everyone, you need a mentor and you need to ask. And I haven't done that. And I think that's something that I need to do. I've been in, I have kind of masterminds. I need to work on that. But I think one of the lessons that I do as I say, not as I do, but I thought this was great advice, was find somebody and ask them if they'll be your mentor. Because when I think of it, if someone was younger than I and worked hard and, said she was going to email or said he was going to email at me and did and followed through, and then just said, Katy, I would like it if you were my mentor. I don't know how I could say no if they were telling me that they wanted to work for it. And so I think I need to kind of put my money where my mouth is there. I've had, again, friends and people that have helped me, but I think for anyone listening, and I'd be curious to hear what you think, really finding a mentor is golden and something that I need to work on.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of mentors. I think that they also need to sort of organically happen. It's not like I can just go through my LinkedIn and be like, throw a dart and like, oh, now you get to mentor, I want you as my mentor. So I think you need to be aware of relationships that you already have and be paying attention to people who are doing work perhaps that you're inspired by. And it may not even be in your line of work that you're interested in, but, I like their leadership style, or I liked how they're, managing their day, or, that kind of thing. So I think first of all, it's about just finding that awareness. I think also as entrepreneurs, if it's not necessarily having perhaps that one person that you always go to, but having a circle of people. You and I have a common friend in common, Sean Walchef from Cali Comfort Barbecue and Digital Hospitality. And I can't tell you in a given month, how many times he and I are just messaging, hey, I just saw this, I just heard this podcast, you're going to love it. Or he'll send something to me. And just having that community of people who are also entrepreneurs, or perhaps it's, people in your industry that you can just share best practices with, and sort of have touch points of mentorship where you don't necessarily have to have a real formal relationship, but just having those people that you can bounce ideas off of, that to me is really crucial as a business owner.
I agree. Do you have a good group, a circle of influences they call it, or
Yeah, I feel like I do. I have them both in the event industry, and then I have, those other business owners that I have been fortunate enough to sort of grow up with. We've grown businesses together kind of in the last, 13 years for me now next month. And just again, having that community of people that you can drop a text into or pick up the phone and just say, here's my idea, or this is where I'm really stuck, or, or sharing, like I said, I share a lot of articles. I share a lot of podcasts, like, hey, I was just listening to this, Katy, I thought this would be great for you, that kind of thing. I think that's really important, that we're not only trying to grow ourselves, but also how can I help you become the best person, for yourself as well. So.
Right. That's good advice. And the thought of the article or the podcast is that I think we all will say, God, I'm going to send Nicole this podcast, and then I don't. But what's nice,
Yeah.
take the second to stop what you're doing, grab that link and email it that way. That's taking that extra step is nice.
Yeah. And I think Sean, and I think he would agree, Sean and I both just are at the point now where it's like, I don't even have to say anything, or he doesn't have to say anything. Just if a text comes with a podcast link, it means, hey, you would benefit from this, right? I read, I heard it, or I read this article and I'm thinking of you. And so that's really nice too. There's not a lot of need for, dear Nicole, I was thinking about you today, that kind of thing. But it's just, we're in that place now. And I have that relationship with other people too, where it's just pop something in a text. And if I'm getting it from you, I know it's there, you've vetted it, that it's good stuff, and you're sending it to me. And so I just think those little, entrepreneurial circles are just important to have, both personally and professionally. Those have been really beneficial.
It's a lonely world, and they tell you, tell you the entrepreneur world is a lonely world.
It is. Are you a podcast listener or a reader, or how do you sort of get your inspiration?
I do a little of everything, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, the way that I'm set up is that I just kind of do a little of everything. I don't dive super deep. I'm always reading. So I balance between kind of a business book, and I read the Building a Story Brand, and I Donald Miller, and then I have the E-Myth waiting. But then,
the E-Myth is so good. You should read the E-Myth.
And then I've got the 4 Agreements all right there as well.
Yeah.
And I try to balance with a novel or something, just to kind of calm down and, but I'm old school TV.
Yeah.
That's how I roll. I mean, I've been wanting to get rid of my cable for years, but for me, I'm still old school. How are they putting the package together? What's going on? And, Channel 8 is where I fill in. So those are my people. Yeah. And I respect that medium, even though everybody else is mad at it.
Yeah.
Kind of, we'll do the old school TV watching and YouTube and articles, whatever I get in my inbox. Skim is a good one. It's
right. I don't think people appreciate how hard television is from a reporter standpoint. And, for somebody to sit and be eating their dinner, watching the 6 o'clock news and, watching the reporters report, they don't understand the day that you've all had to get to that place of actually telling your story. So, the day in the life of a reporter is probably, I would imagine, not as glamorous as everyone thinks being on TV, is, but it is also a lot harder too. You're constantly chasing a story or a lead, or, and then writing, and then, pulling it all together and pulling yourself together to, look your best to be on television. And, there's a lot of steps that go into somebody's just literally reading the news to you at night. So
I tell people that when I was I was the Braves beat reporter, which meant that I had an editorial meeting every morning at 10 a.m. and then the ballpark clubhouse opened at 4. And then I had to get my stories and my research and go live at 5:40. And then I'm there until the game's over. And it doesn't matter if it's 13 innings or not. And then I'm turning around doing my post-game interview and not complaining, but my is that,
Long day.
long
Yeah.
day over and over and over and over.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I think it is an interesting time for news in general. Obviously politics plays a big role into that, but, I hope we get to a place where we can return back to news and media being, the right source, right? The source that we can all trust. I don't know if that will ever return to us. We might have gone, the horse is out of the barn at this point, but it just speaks to people really having to do their own research in the sources and who is actually saying those things. Just because it's on Twitter does not make it true. Just because the president says it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true.
Right. I mean, the old rule back in the day, which I'm sure still stands for most people, is that, if there was a big trade, or if a guy or a girl got let go or something happened in sports, I mean, we definitely were less interested in being the first as we were making sure there were 2 or 3 sources so that it was true.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a hard thing to get rid of in today's society of now.
Right.
Where, we had to show restraint. Listen, do we want to break the story? Absolutely. Do we want to break it? Yes, yes, yes. But the reality is you better make sure that it's true before you go on. And so if this station is up before you, you got to let it ride.
Yeah.
And then go with the right way. So
yeah. And we've gotten to a place of just reacting first and facts second. And that I think is that's tough because, there's even a story in the news today about the NASCAR driver and, kind of what are everyone had a reaction to that, which is understandable, but that now some facts are coming out that perhaps, sort of diffuse that situation enough. And had we had that information before the reaction came to be, would it have been the same? Again, I don't know, but I think we're so quick to react because everything is just so instant, and not necessarily have all of those facts, which is not a great path for us to be going down as a society. Yeah. So when is the last time you asked for help? Let's move into sort of the theme of the podcast being the big ask. So have you had to make a big ask either personally or professionally? And what was that process like? And what was the outcome like for you?
It's funny. There's a lot of asks. So I'll just think of maybe a couple that are new. I think when I was running for Woman of the Year, just like you, you're asking, there's a lot of big asks.
Yes.
That's a lot of big asks because you're asking for people to donate their money and be behind you. I would say, because I was grinding for years as a sportscaster, I made a lot of asks. I think I have 2 good ones. One was that when I moved here in 2005, I went to work for Fox Sports South in Atlanta, which is Fox's biggest regional. And they were going to kind of do a bunch of shows and they were going to have me anchor shows. They had a place for me, et cetera, et cetera. And Fox had the rights and still does, but the rights to a lot of teams, the Hawks, broadcast rights, Hawks, Braves, some ACC, SEC stuff, and then a lot of teams in Nashville and Nashville, Carolinas. So it was a regional network. So it's 7 Southeastern states. So my point is there was a lot of opportunity because they had a lot of original content. And when I got there, so I had moved everything from San Diego, sunny San Diego, to Atlanta, which I love. I had lived there before and I was excited, and they were doubling my salary and all this great stuff. And then I got there, and everything changed with the main network and the main Fox. And so those shows that I was going to be anchoring were gone. And I was literally walking around without anything to do. And, and your worth is tied to what you're doing, especially at that time. They just hauled my cookies, 3,000 miles away. So I walked to the executive producer's office and just said, why don't you just put me on the Braves? I know baseball. You're paying me. Why don't you consider it? And I have to tell you, the South is the South, and we all have a long way to go, but the South especially. And so they ended up putting me on the Braves. And that was I walked into the office just saying, I don't know what else to do here, but why don't you just stick me with the Braves? So then I was their beat reporter for 3 years. And that turned out to be a great opportunity for me. And I learned a lot. but I don't know, Nicole, what they would have done with me had I not asked that question.
Yeah, being bold and being brave enough to walk in there and say, I'm the best person for this job, and this is what you should consider, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it's really important. Yeah, that's a great example of it, and creating that opportunity for yourself that
Right.
might not have otherwise existed.
Right. I mean, that changed the trajectory of my career, you know?
Yeah, right.
And then the other thing for everything is a lot. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to think outside the box, and you have to be brave. And so there's a lot of asks that are common.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that, we do them, I think, more than we even realize that we're doing them. But there are a lot of times where it takes courage, and even if it's securing a new client and going to somebody perhaps that hasn't come to you first, but you see an opportunity and asking them to entrust their careers to you, or their image or their brand. I mean, that those are big asks that are needing to be made as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good point, because now you're saying, and I love that topic, because you have to really be confident in what you're offering, because you're asking people, at least for me, and you too at times, I need you to trust me, and I need you to be uncomfortable for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
That's not fun.
Right.
That's not fun.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So what projects are you currently working on? I know with COVID, things are a little bit funky, but what are you working on right now that excites you?
I
Or
love
where do you see potential?
Yeah, I love the balance with helping. I did a virtual course with a company today on bolstering your virtual presence, which I love. So I love that. That hasn't been everything, but it's definitely been a way that I've been able to pivot. And I like that, because it's something that none of us saw coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got clients that I have a couple that really want to be thought leaders, which I'm really enjoying, because a lot of it's brainstorming about what they're really passionate about and what they really know about, and how do we get it out there. I also have a client that is a renowned speaker, and just is not it's not translating on his videos. So we're working on that. So and then I've got a couple ex-athletes that are broadcasters that I work with, not every day, but regularly. So
Yeah.
I like it all. I like training. I like working with students, young. I've worked at National University. I like, talking to young people to get them ready for interviews and stuff, interviewing skills. I love doing that. So I really like the balance, much like TV, where I loved anchoring, I loved reporting, I loved hosting, I loved all the different aspects of it, just kind of like this.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And, I think the service that you provide is one of those that people think, oh, I don't need that. I could do it on my own, right? Until there's like a disaster, or they're not converting, their keynote, or something isn't happening, and then they come to you. So I imagine there's a sort of some humbling and some vulnerability in your clients when they first are coming to you, because they realize perhaps that either A, it isn't working and we need to be coached, or they come with it's working, but I need to take it to the next level.
Right, which is what we love, you and I, right? Because it
Mm-hmm.
want to be great, which is great, because if you want to be great, then I can push you.
Yeah.
That's the real fun part about it. Sometimes with what I teach, it's a really emotional thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of have to, now you're navigating what you're qualified for and how you can get them there, versus finding a way to let it go, and take it easy, because people can
Yeah.
really be hard on themselves. And I
Right.
find, I've had people over the last years just get frustrated because they're not getting it this quickly. And I say, listen, if this is not easy, I did it for 25 years, and
Yeah.
it took me a long time to be able to watch myself on camera and not want to throw up, really.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I get all of that, but it takes work. You have to want to do the work, and it's a skill set, and we can make you better, but you can't just come in for a half day and then be amazing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think it's like a muscle that you have to continue to train, right? And the more you do it, obviously, the more comfortable you get with it. But in the beginning, it can be a tad bit intimidating, just as it would be to say, oh, go stand on that stage. We're not going to record you, but go stand on that stage and speak to 500 people in a room. It's funny how some people are more comfortable doing that versus just sitting in a room with you and a camera, and they have more anxiety with it just being you and a camera than they would perhaps 500 people in an audience. Yeah. Oh, you froze. You froze up on me. So you and I, as we've said, both are involved with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and we both participated in separate years as their Man Woman of the Year campaign. And for those who don't know, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society runs a national campaign, but at the chapter level, which is a 10-week fundraising campaign that happens every year. And so they identify community leaders and business owners and brave folks who say yes when they're asked, who commit to raising as much money as they possibly can in 10 weeks. And then at the end of that campaign, a Man and a Woman of the Year are both crowned with a very dignified sash that we get as the winners. So I know it was a grueling experience going through it when I did in 2017, but also an incredibly rewarding experience. And so my question to you is, first of all, why did you say yes to that opportunity? What drew you to it?
Whew, I mean, bottom line is, so I had Jack Kelly, who's the guy that nominated me, who, a lot of people in San Diego know as a community leader, and he had been a Man of the Year. But what had happened is, originally when they asked me to do it, my grandma had multiple myeloma, and my dear friend Laura Joins, who is a good old friend from Atlanta, had recently lost her mom and to multiple myeloma, and her mom had lived with it for a long time, and so I had seen that happen. And so those were the two women that I had in mind when I was thinking about it. But to your point, it's a huge commitment, and it's scary. It's 10 weeks. How much money?
A long time.
It feels like a long time, right? But it's not.
Yes.
And so
nope.
Jack Kelly, who nominated me, his mom, as you know, had AML, and we were playing phone tag about whether I was going to do it or not. And I remember I was sitting right here when he called and just said, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry I haven't been in touch, but we just buried my mom." And I thought, what, I'm supposed to say no now when this guy thinks that I can help raise money and fund research when he's got the wherewithal to call me back after he just buried his mom? And who am I to say no?
Right.
To be honest, that was it. I mean, I had Laura's mom, Mary, in mind, and my grandma in mind. But
yeah. And I think having those mission connections, albeit if it's in your own personal family or close friends, or just even hearing, Jack's story of how the research that LLS has been involved in, prolonged his mom's life. He's very proud of that. And as sad as it is that he and his family and we all have lost her, the incredible research that LLS is a part of is the reason that she lived as long as she did, and had a very fruitful life until, very close to the end, as far as I understand the story. And so, just being a part of that and raising money it may not cure the people who have cancer today, but it will ultimately cure, we'll find the cure. We will, and whatever we can do today to make that happen. So, we all have our reasons for saying yes. I I think it was one of the hardest things that I did. But then I would look at, my mission connection is my friends lost their 2.5-year-old Hazel to AML. And we actually lost her 2 weeks into my campaign. And so, there, any moment, any glimmer of wow, this is hard. I don't, what am I doing? I'm raising money, was quickly diminished by the reality of what my friends were going through. And so, it's just perspective, right? Yes, you and I are going to have a hard 10-week season, right? But these families that are enduring cancer and these parents who have lost children, after 10 weeks, that doesn't go away for them. And so for me, that was just always a big motivator, that no other family should have to bury their child. Jack shouldn't have to bury his mom. And, so for me, that was my yes. That was my yes.
I remember them, and I remember how much grace they had, because I met Hazel and they were so gracious. And, you don't know how you could handle if it was happening to you, but her family was so graceful.
Yep. Yes. And they actually even came to the finale. So they were there the night that I won. And that was literally, 5 days after they had done the memorial service for her. And it just, there was nothing I could say to bring back Hazel, but at least I could say we did the best that we could, and we raised a lot of money in a short amount of time that will honor her. And that was the only way I knew how to help my friends to get to the other side of grief and navigate grief. And so it's a wonderful organization. You and I are still involved in the organization, and I thank you for your incredible gifts and talent and time and treasure that you dedicate to the organization. We will one day find a cure for blood cancer, which will subsequently help with so much other cancer research. It's not just blood cancer. So thank you very much as a board member. Thank you for dedicating your time as a volunteer to the organization, and for saying yes to the ask of being Woman of the Year, because it was a big ask. I know that is a big ask to say yes to. And so just know how much I value that and respect you for doing that.
Well, back at you. And I also say that, the Man of the Year and the All-Star of the Year from my year have both passed away.
Yeah.
And they passed away within a week of each other. And to your point, we have to keep going.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Unfortunately, as we lose more people, it just is a reminder that there's still work to be done. So yes. All right, let's switch gears. As I always do, I end every podcast with rapid fire questions. So these are just intended to be fun. No right or wrong answer, no judgment, just whatever comes off the top of your head. Okay. So first question is title of your lifetime movie.
How about that?
If you could, yes, I make no judgment on any answers. So, okay. So if you could change places with any celebrity right this minute, who would it be?
God, who am I paying to? I would say Pink.
Ah, good. Yes, she's awesome. When do you feel happiest?
At sunset.
Okay. If you're running for politics, what would be your biggest campaign promise?
Social justice reform.
Ultimate dinner party, which 4 guests do you invite?
Yeah, that's a good one. It used to be Michael Jordan. I'll say Jordan, Julie Foudy, and Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, amazing. Okay, that's an eclectic group. Perfect. Right this minute, you have to get a tattoo, regardless of how you feel about them. What do you get and why?
Peace sign. Let's go.
The peace sign. Okay, great. Biggest pet peeve in business?
There's so many. Just all the advice that everyone says entrepreneurs need to follow.
So true, right? You can get paralyzed by all that advice and never do anything. What is your wish for the next generation?
I mean, my wish for the next generation is to find to keep doing what they're doing, but to find a balance between the benefits of social media and not letting it eat away at your soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, take the best parts of that for
And
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. When does your light shine the brightest?
when I'm helping somebody, when I'm
Awesome.
helping somebody, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what is your big ask, either personal and professional, right this minute, and how can we help you?
I would say that I would love to continue to scale my business. So if anyone out there thinks that they need, whether it's a group or individual, help being the best version of themselves wherever the camera is, I can definitely help.
Awesome. Great. Katy, thank you for saying yes to my ask of being a guest on the Big S podcast. You've been so fun to chat with and get to know better. And how can people find you if they're interested in connecting?
My email's Katy at Katy Temple Coaching, and it's Katy with a Y. Katy Temple Media Coaching is my website, and I'm on LinkedIn. And thank you, and continued success to you. And
Thank you.
I know it's your podcast, but I do want to say good for you for staying positive throughout this challenging time, considering what your business is, and for all the work that you do for LLS and funding all that cancer research.
Oh,
And for everything that you do to boost women, because I don't think it's just about women. I definitely don't, but I do know we need to be kinder to each other.
absolutely.
So thank you for
Absolutely.
all of that you do.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it's been my joy to spend the last 45 minutes with you. So thank you so much. And we'll look forward to connecting with you on all of those mediums and channels that you just mentioned. Thanks, Katy. Yes.